This is Life Rewired, the brain injury podcast for survivors by survivors. And now your host, Rob and Ashley. Hi, I'm Rob, and this is Life Rewired. And joining me, it's not Ashley, it's Ashley's mother, Mary Ellen. Hello, Mary Ellen.
Hello, Rob. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. A lot of people are probably thinking, okay, Mary Ellen doesn't have a brain injury, so what is she doing here? Well, you wrote a book, and it came out in December.
Yes.
And your book has a lot of things in it that can also apply to brain injury survivors, anybody, because what your book is about being a non-grandparent. So
Correct.
if you would tell us how that came into being, how did you decide to write this book?
Well, my background is in nursing. And when I was early in my nursing career, I did work as a maternal child health nurse in labor and delivery. And then for home care, I did home care for years through obstetrical home care, visiting and monitoring women telephonically through like a call-in center for when they were having complicated pregnancies. So I did have a long history before I became involved with nursing education in working with maternal child health. And when Ashley's sister, my youngest daughter, when she became pregnant, we were over the moon because we just thought, we were going to have a baby in the family and I was going to be a grandmom. And here at the end of the first trimester, she suffered a miscarriage. And when she had her pregnancy loss, it took us all, by surprise, and we were,
Yeah.
Devastated. And I needed to focus on her and her husband. It was their tragedy. They needed to get back to their normal, whatever normal is,
Right.
their way of
Right.
life. And so I put my grief and my loss on the back burner so I could be of support to them. And then my days were getting better. I was less sad, but then I would start hearing about other people that would be announcing, like, that they were going to have a grandchild, or maybe they already had a grandchild or two, and they were announcing that their child or in-law was expecting another baby, and then the feelings would resurface.
Right.
But I was working full time, and you know how life gets in the way.
Oh,
I
yes.
read your book, and it was very poignant. All the things that you pointed out in terms of your path to finally writing the book, and that's what happened to me. I just kept thinking, I'll find a resource. I'll find something that'll help me. And in the loss and grief sections of bookstores and online, there are many resources for loss and grief. Thank God.
Yeah.
The death of a pet, loss of a job, whatever. But for my particular circumstance of like anticipating a grandchild and then having it not transpire, I could find nothing. Couldn't even find an
Right.
article on it. So then I started thinking, well, maybe I should write that book. But again, life got in the way and my
Right.
responsibilities at home and at work. But I had a tipping point on a Christmas Eve mass service where a complete stranger that I sat next to in church started talking to me all about her grandchildren. And I felt really claustrophobic, and I wish I could have gotten out of that pew, but it was packed to the gills and I couldn't leave. And that was really a gift. That was a Christmas gift to me because it gave me the impetus when I left the church, like, you have to write this book. You have to let people know the communication strategies you learned, the self-care strategies you learned, how you learn to, live as a non-grandparent was the term
Yeah.
that I quoted, in a grandparenting world, because we're surrounded by grandparents everywhere.
Right.
So I was very fortunate. It took me a very long time, 8 years, to write the book, because I could work on it for a period of time and then I had to put it away and then work and put it away. I have a lot of research in the book. I have numerous citations, more than 50 citations in the book. So if people want to go and look for further resources, they have that capability. So, but my final chapter talks all about self-care. And I've been following your podcast with what.
Okay. We had a brief interruption in signal, but we're back again. So, Mary Ellen, we were talking about
My
when
dog
you.
is here.
Hi, doggy.
She's Princess Ariel from from the Little Mermaid.
Princess
Um,
Ariel. So we were talking about your book and how you wrote that, and I'm trying to remember where we left off. Do you happen to recall?
I think what I was saying was I got the impetus finally to write it from this woman who was a complete stranger and asking me questions in church about,
Yes.
telling me all
Yes,
about her
yes, yes.
grandchildren and did I have grandchildren. So that gave me the impetus to write this book. But then because this is where we stop. Because I'm a follower of the podcast that you and Ashley do, I really I realize how self care is so important, not only
Mm,
for the person who has the brain injury, but for any caretakers, caregivers that they have in their
right.
life. So I thought that that would be a good topical area to discuss with you. Um,
Yeah.
what I found helpful, what I put in the book about what I found helpful, and how people really need to take their time. It's like a process of trial and error
Yeah.
to discover, what really is going to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And not to be disappointed if you try something and it's not helpful, not to give up, to have the
Right.
perseverance to keep until you do find something um,
Mm-hmm. And
that
everyone
works.
heals at different rates too. There's no magic number.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's that's very, very true. And I was someone, even though I'm a nurse, I was someone who really didn't practice self care until I was in my 40s.
Mm,
Um, I was busy, the kids were little, and I worked part time at that particular point in time, but between volunteering at school for things, and I was going to
yeah.
school myself for my master's degree. And it's just that, as we always say, life gets in the way. But
Yeah.
once I started self care practices, I realized how important they really were, not
Mm-hmm.
just for my physical health, but for my, psychological and emotional health. So I
Right.
do discuss some of the things that I found helpful for me, like exercising. I wasn't really happy at a gym. I thought it was kind of monotonous and boring, but I do enjoy the outdoors. So I find that walking or hiking
Mm-hmm.
outdoors is very helpful for me. And I try, especially now we have another dog. We've always had dogs. So, getting out there and walking every day is something that's, really important um, to keep me feeling like I'm refreshed. Um, but people who, don't have the ability to walk outdoors, maybe their neighborhood isn't safe. If they could have the ability to have transportation, either on their own or through public transportation, to go
Mm-hmm.
somewhere like a mall,
Right.
that would be helpful to walk. Listening to music, whether you do that while you're
Oh
walking or
yes.
whether you just do that independently throughout the day. I try and do that, put on the cable television station for the music channel when I'm doing my household chores or when I'm cooking so that I don't just have like a sitcom or the news on in the
Yeah.
background. Um,
Did you
and
do a
then with music,
meditation?
sometimes, just dancing, like even though I'm older, but that whole dance like no one's watching. I mean, that really gets your endorphins flowing too.
It really
Um,
does.
some people are good at sports, um, or some people never were athletic as they were younger. And now that they're a certain age, they think they can't try it. But there are low impact sports. A friend of mine plays bocce ball with a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
I took up golfing. I took lessons and I joined my husband now as a golfer. I golf with the ladies. I'm not good by any means, but it's exercise and it gets me out in the fresh air and
Yeah.
a camaraderie with people
Mm-hmm.
that you get to know. Um, I have done yoga. I really have to get back more into that, but in the past, I've been more active with yoga. And one nice thing is when we go away on vacation, usually there's an advertisement somewhere that oh, we're offering yoga on the beach today, or we're offering yoga at a community center. So I've even gone to yoga classes when I've been on vacation, and just to keep
Oh,
it up.
nice.
And I find it very helpful.
Yeah.
Um, Sleeping, the old proverb of 7 to 8 hours a night, but the research does hold that up, that's
Oh, I believe that. Yes.
very important. So the more rested you are, the more psychologically healthy you could
Mm-hmm.
be. Um, and limiting blue light prior to sleep for probably a couple hours. There's research for that
Yeah.
too. So people who are on their computers, on their devices, on their phones, you really should stop that a couple hours before you plan to go to
Yes.
bed, because it really does interfere
Hmm.
with the melatonin that your body produces naturally, and just your ability to tone down and to decompress when you're on devices.
I
Um,
would say to that is what a lot of people don't realize is when you turn, I have my blue light turned off on my computer and my phone at all times.
oh, I
And
see.
when you first turn it off,
Hmm.
that drastic change is like, "Ooh, I don't like that." But once you like 8 or 9 seconds in, it's like, oh, okay, your eyes have adjusted and you don't miss that blue light. That's becomes your norm. So that's
That's a wonderful point, Rob, for you
yeah.
to say about that. Um, because there are some people, they say that adolescents, have a lot of quote unquote overuse of devices, and
Hmm.
they're worried about their mental health down the road because of how much they're not involved socially interacting with people.
Yeah.
But I think as we age, especially because sometimes people don't interact with people after they retire, they might be a little bit isolated. They turn to the devices for something to do, and
Yeah.
really it isn't healthful to be
Right.
on your devices, no matter what your age is, for more than probably 90 minutes or a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
um, Meditation is something that I've practiced too, and that's actually more and more websites you can find really good meditative practice information, and also books that are written about it. And for me, I do something like a quiet time in the morning when I get up. Now that I'm not rushing out the door to go to work, when I'm having my coffee, I don't turn on the TV. I don't want to know what terrible things happened overnight while I was asleep, and I just sit and I have quiet time. I say some prayers because I am, a spiritual person. But even if you just sit for 5-10 minutes without getting all the bombardment when you first get up
Hmm.
in the morning, and if your mornings are hectic because you are still working or going to school, evening, carving out some type of time during the day. Um, I read a book once where this gentleman who was working full time and had a hectic job, he wrote in his book that when he'd pull into his neighborhood, he wouldn't even go as far as his home. He would just pull over and he would just sit and take deep breaths and decompress for like 5 minutes before he pulled into his home, because once he got in, there was all this hectic activity because of his
Yeah.
family. And it just gave him that time to like try and reconnect with his inner self. So
It's a
I
good
just think if you
idea.
can find that quiet time throughout the day
Hmm.
at some point, it
Oh
would be
yeah.
very helpful. And then community service projects. I can't emphasize that enough, how I've been doing them for decades. I've done soup kitchens, I've done food banks, I've done projects through church. I've done neighborhood help, like just walking dogs when people needed it, when they were ill or recovering from surgery. There's so much that you could do in the community. And because my book focuses on people who don't have a grandchild and would like to have interactions with children, I do mention that schools, whether they're after school programs or summer camp programs, they're always looking for volunteers.
Hmm.
And you will have to get background clearances before you would be able to work with the children, but that's not too involved. I mean,
Yeah.
it's easy to do, and if you really want to have an involvement with children's programs, your local library, um, that type of thing, it's something that you could investigate
Oh,
and maybe have a
absolutely.
couple hours a week, or a couple hours a day, doing
Yeah.
that type of activity. Things that I didn't do, that I think there's literature that's very supportive, are, and you play the piano,
Yeah.
playing a musical instrument or
Hmm.
learning a musical instrument, not to feel that you're too old to take that on. A friend of mine took up the guitar as a senior citizen and
Oh.
is doing very well with the guitar. I know, maybe you could say what the piano brings to you in terms of fulfillment.
Oh gosh. whenever I'm feeling blue or I'm just like ugh, had a hectic day, it's very therapeutic to just play.
Hmm.
Whether you want to play something really dramatic or if you just need something soft, and
Hmm.
it just music is very peaceful and it's very
Hmm.
calming.
That's right. That's right. It truly is. I grew up with a mom that played by ear also, and
Oh,
she
really?
would just sit down and play, and I knew that that was her way to decompress because she had
Hmm.
six she had six children. So, um, and Ashley does artwork, and that's another thing. I have a friend here in the community that does artwork, um, and that's something that will really help people have some time for themselves. It's quiet, and you're
Yeah.
productive, and you have a product at the end that's just, beautiful to share.
Ashley
Um,
does a great job. We need to display some of her stuff here sometimes.
yeah, it's a shame I'm upstairs. I'd have to run down and get it. But she made a beautiful Wizard of Oz rainbow yellow brick road for me a couple years ago when I was going through some medical testing that we weren't sure what was going on with my lungs as a non-smoker all my life. And she knew I was on edge about that. And it's a beautiful piece of artwork.
Well, when we're
Um,
done recording, take a picture and send it to me, and in
okay.
the editing, it'll appear right here.
Okay. You could put it right at the end.
Yep.
And then I guess last but not least, there's a lot of literature on journaling, on how refreshing that is
Hmm.
for self care, for people to journal. Some people journal every day, and they journal pages and pages of material. Other people journal sporadically and maybe just a little paragraph. Um, when I had nursing students that I worked with, I told them that I didn't care if they journaled in a hard copy kind of a book or if they did it online and did it on a Word document, because with everybody liking to use their computers now and their laptops, I said, but I had to review journals and about community health experiences. And at the end of the semester, it was very transformative. Like people really wrote, students wrote about how they started that, some of them, with like a chip on their shoulder or trepidation or like, why do I have to do all this journaling? And they really found how therapeutic it was for them as the
Yeah.
semester unwound. So, but those are pretty much um, the things that I've done for myself that have helped me feel like I'm doing something for self care. And then what the literature says in terms of things that I really didn't put in the book, like the artwork or learning a musical instrument, things of that nature, but that how helpful.
Well, let
Um,
me ask you, because I'd never heard the term non-grandparent until your book.
mhm.
So, in your research, did you find that term anywhere, or was it just something you
No,
just coined yourself?
it was something back in 2018 that I thought, well, if I'm not a grandparent, what am I? Like, how can you describe yourself? And I just decided one day, I was like, ooh, I remember learning in school the prefix non means the absence of. And to be sure I wasn't mistaken after all these years of being in high school or elementary school, wherever I learned that term, I looked it up online, Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and that's what it says. The absence of or lacking the usual characteristics of. So when
Hmm.
you think of the, non-toxic, non-religious,
Yeah.
non-conformist, whatever you put non in front of, and I thought, well, that's the word to describe me. So I wrote a couple articles for loss and grief journals and about the subject of non-grandparenting before I wrote the book, and I
Yeah.
used the term um, in those articles way back in 2019 and 2020.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: when you decided to start writing your book, how was that? How did the family react? Were they like, "Oh, why do we want to rehash this?" Or were they just, "Yeah,
Well,
let's do it"?
actually, what I did was I had to reach out to my daughter and son in law who had the pregnancy loss because I did not. The book is about my experience, but I did have to divulge that they had an infertility history and were gloriously pregnant,
Hmm.
and everybody was over the moon. And then we were all taken down this dark path that we were not prepared for. And they were right. with me. They were like, "Mom, you're going to help. You're going to help people because there's nothing out there like this, and people do need information about how to cope day to day." And when my articles appeared on these online resources, there's always that link at the bottom that says comments or
Hmm.
email. I provided my email address. So I heard from many people with very deep thanks and gratitude that I
That's
validated their
awesome.
feelings. Um, a handful of my emails came from the United Kingdom. And I was just blown away by that because I was very narrow focused and I was thinking of,
Hmm.
people who live in the United States, people who were kind of like me,
Yeah.
But I realized quickly that it was a universal phenomenon.
Yeah.
And even Alex Trebek, I include this in the book. He was interviewed by a Canadian reporter, Lisa Laflamme, and she talked to him all about his life.
Yeah.
And that at a certain point in the interview, towards the end, she said, "Do you have any regrets because you've accomplished so much?" And he paused and he said, "Well," and this is when he was sick. This was when he knew he had limited time.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, if I pass before I have a grandchild, that might bother me." And I thought, oh my goodness. And you can look at that, look it up on YouTube, and you can see that I'm not um, exaggerating, that those were his words. And then he
Yeah.
did write a book, The Answer Is, and he wrote about that in his book also. And I thought, wow, you know of some famous people, but you don't know everything that's going on in their life.
Hmm.
And I thought, I never knew he didn't have grandchildren, but I thought, yeah, so he carried a secret sorrow, I'm sure, and many
Yeah.
people, not just about not having grandchildren, but so many different factors that happen in your life, the way your and Ashley's life and all your viewers' lives changed when you had your accidents,
Hmm.
and the way the caretakers' lives changed also. And, people just, you wake up every morning and you put your boots on and you just don't know what's going to happen in the
True.
course of the day. Um,
Yeah.
so it's just a universal that people don't talk about things that
Right.
they might find a lot of support and a lot of comfort if they were able to do so.
I'll say this. A comment that was given about my book, I think, is also going to be something that will be given to you for yours as well. Because someone told me this was the book I didn't know I needed.
Mm,
So
beautiful, beautiful, Rob.
you never know when you write those books
Mm-hmm.
who is it going to touch that needed to hear it.
Correct.
And sometimes it's the unlikeliest of places that are going to say, "Wow, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know I needed that."
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think your book is going to do. I think it's going to resonate with the people that really are searching for it. But I think it's really going to resonate with the people that are like, "Where's this book been?"
Well, thank you, and thank you for your support. I really
Oh,
appreciate
always, always. I was going to say we could get Ashley on the line, but she'd probably be like, "What are you doing?"
it.
And Ashley, I want to send my love to you because I know you're recovering from the COVID, but you're going to do great.
She is.
Yeah. This is where I normally throw it to Ashley to give her closing thoughts. So I'll let you be Ashley today.
Well, the one thing I didn't say, and again, Rob, if I'm going to send you this photo of the artwork Ashley created for me,
Yeah.
I can send you this second photo of a very small circular elliptical um, framed artwork that I have here at the house that I bought years ago from a catalog. And it's what I conclude my book with. And it says on it, "Do one thing every day that makes you happy."
I love
And I
it.
think that that's what we need to do, is
Hmm.
just, we don't have to shoot for the moon, or it doesn't have to be an astronomical thing.
Yeah.
But if we can find time to do one thing every day that makes us happy, I mean, maybe it's just because the older person is struggling in the grocery store to reach the item on the high shelf, and
Right.
you help them get it, or a kid drops something in the parking lot and the mom or dad is there and and they have their arms full and they can't reach down and pick it up, and you help out that family. What it doesn't have to be something tremendous, but I have that kind of as my mantra. So I would like to tell the audience of your listeners to try and do one thing every day that makes you happy.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a great way to close it out.
And I
So
thank you, Rob. I thank you for the
yeah.
invitation, and thank you for all the good work that you're doing
Oh, thank
um,
you.
for Poppy. Because I didn't say after my maternal child experience, I'm master's and doctorally prepared in public health. And so I think what you're doing is, and Ashley, is just a fabulous public health and population health message for everyone.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, guys, if you've enjoyed this program today, which I know you have, hit the subscribe button, share this with someone that needs to hear this. And if you're a non grandparent, share it with somebody else that's a non grandparent that would like to get the book. If you want to get Marilyn's book, you can go to innerpeacepress.com, and I'll have a link in the description below for you to go to. And is there anywhere else that they can buy it, or is that the best place to buy it?
Or the website that was created by the publisher,
Oh, yeah.
non-grandparent, all one word, non-grandparent.com.
Okay, that will also be linked as well. So look in the description, and you'll have a link that you click on that. It'll take you right to her website. You can purchase the book there, and I hope that you do. I think you'll really enjoy the read. So until next week, this is Life Rewired. See you guys.
Thank you so much, Rob.